Well, shalom, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study. Here in California, and we are blessed that we are able to come together once again. In our study, we are in the book of Leviticus, Vayikra. Let me cut off my phone because it's starting to act up. Oh, okay, it's all right. Oh my goodness, there's something each time with this technology. So here we are. I'm in my grandson's room and we got stuff all up on the walls in the background, but thank the Lord that we are here and able to continue on our journey through the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. We can complete that study in 52 lessons, 52 weeks, which comprise 1 year, and we will have completed all the first 5 books of the Bible, titled in Hebrew, the Torah, or the instructions of Jehovah for his people that was given through Moses to write down and to give to us. And so we are excited in our study. This is lesson 24. And so we are, of course, Vayikra is, and he called. So we'll see that in the first sentence of this particular lesson. And it's a fascinating book, Vayikra, because for a Orthodox Jewish child at the age of 5, it's the first book that they learn. And so it's a fascinating thing, but originally it was kind of titled the book for the priests, or the instructions for the priesthood. Well, throughout translations, we get into this title called Leviticus, which is, of course, Levi were the tribe of priests. And so the instructions for the priests have now been given the title of Leviticus, but in Hebrew, it begins the study of the system of korbanot, or sacrifices, but it entails what that word actually means at its root value, and that is to come close, or our desire to get close to Jehovah, our God. And so all of this understanding comes through this system of korbanot, which is the system of sacrifices. But it's fascinating because all of this information was given to Moses, and even the building of the tabernacle was given even before the people engaged in the sin of breaking and violating the covenant through the situation of the golden calf. But what we find in our study is that Jehovah always kind of gives us the end, a glimpse of the end before the beginning. And so this system, and we'll notice that he called Moses to the tent of meeting. And so in going there, Moses is going inside the holy place for a time to hear what Jehovah would have to say. So the tabernacle has already been constructed. The courtyard around the tabernacle has been built. And so in the conclusion of Exodus, remember, the tabernacle had been built, everything was acceptable. Moses accepted the offering for the people. And now we're in this study beginning in the book, the shortest book, but also the middle book of the Torah. There's Genesis and Exodus on one side of Leviticus, and then on the other side is Numbers and Deuteronomy. So it's the book that's in the middle, and it's basically, I guess we would call the midpoint of the Torah itself is in the book of Leviticus. And so even though we may not, of course, in the Christian world, most of us haven't been taught about the sacrificial system because we have been taught that it was done away with. Well, in one sense, when we look in the book of Hebrews, it tells us that these things were a shadow or foreshadow those things that were to come. So to understand all that Yeshua, our Messiah, accomplished, it's important that you understand the sacrificial system, and then that makes you better equipped to understand what Yeshua, our Messiah, accomplished with his renewed or even better covenant. So we're going to learn about the splashing of the blood on the altar, the splashing on the curtain that separated the holy from the holiest holy. And so many fascinating stories about, this is a lot of, I mean, every time there's a particular type of sacrifice, there's blood splashed on the altar, blood splashed on the entrance into the holy place. And so you can see that by the end of a year, there was a mess in terms of the curtains, because they're going in there and sprinkling this blood after these offerings. But of course, they're doing the morning and the evening sacrifice to begin the day and end the day, and then all the sacrifices during the day. So all of that, and the blood is being splashed on the altar. And it is just, we need to understand a little bit more so that we'll totally appreciate more, and we will become closer to Jehovah, our God. We will become closer to him as we learn to appreciate more the sacrificial system. We still give sacrifice of praise, the sacrifice of worship, the sacrifice of thanksgiving. The prayers of the saints are like in Revelations, it talks about the incense. It's basically the prayers going up. And we'll get into all of those things so you have something that to correlate that with what takes place in the Brit Hadashah, or what we call the New Testament. But in the book of Hebrews, it talks about the fact that this was the sacrificial system, the system of korbanot. It wasn't just to kill animals. Jehovah doesn't get any pleasure out of that, but what he does get pleasure out of is obedience. So as we go through this, we're going to touch on those points and really begin to get a better understanding of what this system that we call the sacrificial system, or korbanot in Hebrew, what that actually entails as we get into Leviticus, or the book concerning the sacrifices of the priesthood. So with that, we're going to pray and then go into our introduction and share our screen and get into our notes in our PowerPoint presentation. Jehovah, our Elohim, we thank you for this time. We thank you for this social medium that we can utilize to study your word together and to show ourselves approved, workmen not ashamed of our hire, rightly dividing the word of truth. We thank you that we're able to study this word even in our various locations. This you have provided for us. So we thank you and praise you for the Ruach HaKodesh, your Holy Spirit, as our Messiah Yeshua gave forth the Holy Spirit to come and go along with us or come alongside us, but also to be in us, so that not only are we empowered to understand the word, and we are also empowered to be doers of the word. So we thank you and praise you for all that you do. In the name of Yeshua, our Messiah, we pray. Amen. Okay, with that, we're going to get into our split screen and begin our lesson on today. Remember, as you join, always mute yourselves so that I don't get the back feed as we go through this lesson. It's kind of a long lesson, but at the same time, we're going to get through it. So I'm going to push my shared screen. And there we are. And so with that, I'm going to move this up a little bit for me. And we're going to begin our slide presentation. All right, so we see here that this is lesson 24, Vayikra, which means, and he called. And we'll see that after we get through with our introduction. It'll be from Leviticus chapter 1, verses 1 through chapter 5, verse 26. This is March 9th, 2022, and we are in lesson 24 of our 52 lessons through the Torah in 1 year. So with that, let us begin our introduction. Vayikra begins the third book of the Torah, as we explained, and it's called Leviticus. Last week, we completed the reading of the book of Exodus, which concluded, which is Shemot in Hebrew, which concluded with the description of the construction of the tabernacle. Now, the tabernacle has been built, the sacrifices have been made, the priests have been given instructions on how to conduct the sacrifices, and now this week's portion will provide a description of the various sacrifices of animal, fowl, and meal offerings offered by the priests in the newly constructed sanctuary on the altar inside the courtyard. And as it begins, Jehovah will call to Moses from the tent of meeting and communicates to him the laws of the korbanot, the sacrifices, meaning the opportunity to get close to Jehovah. And how do we get close to Jehovah? Through obedience. And so the system was set up, and we're going to really see it as we get into the later chapters, especially chapter 4 and 5 of the sin offerings, how it was important for the people to understand that even though Jehovah is going to, he's preparing them for telling them, I want you to be holy, for I, your Elohim, am holy. So you're set apart. So you're to be different. You are to be obedient and follow the dictates of Jehovah. But when you miss the mark, and it's not a willful sin, but you inadvertently sin, then Jehovah wants you to know that the way has been prepared for you to come close to this holy God once again. So we're going to find out about the ascending offering called the burnt offering. In Hebrew, it is olah. That's when the whole animal is going to go up in smoke. The only thing left is usually the skin. And everything that isn't burned on the altar is taken outside of the camp and burned in a designated place. The olah that is wholly raised to Jehovah by fire atop the altar. 5 varieties of meal offering, and that's called minha. Minha is prepared with fine flour, olive oil, and frankincense. Then we're going to learn about the third type of offering, the peace offering. In Hebrew, shelamim. That's where the meat was eaten by one bringing the offering, and after parts of the organs and the fat are burned on the altar, and the other part that is not eaten are given to the person to eat with his family, that part goes to the priest as for things that they have that are provided for them, so that they will always have meat and grain and food to eat. So that's the mincha offering, the peace offering, the shelamim. Then we have the different types of sin offering. In Hebrew, it's hatat. That is brought to atone for transgressions committed erroneously by either the high priest inadvertently sins, the entire community sins, the king, or even an ordinary person. Whoever sins, or we call miss the mark, that is called like a trespass offering. And in Hebrew, it's ma'al. And that's brought by one who has misappropriated property. You picked up something that you had no business, didn't return something you should have returned. Done that. One that doesn't really understand. At the time, he didn't understand that he had committed a sin, but now he knows that he had done something that transgressed the commands of the Torah. And so it could be the thing that he was in a room, didn't know that a person was dead, or didn't know that the person in the room had been around someone, didn't know those things, but was later made aware. And so therefore, he wants to get right. Well, I want to be back close with Jehovah, my God. So I will bring this ma'al offering to the priest. And of course, those parts would be done in pretty much the same way. So this is the lesson that we're going to go into today. These 5 different types of offerings, and kind of explaining what they are. And then it's going to be explained again with a little more detail given even as we go through the lesson. So let us begin in Leviticus chapter 1. And here we see the concept of Vayikra. Jehovah called to Moshe and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. He said, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any of you brings an offering to Jehovah, you may bring your animal offering either from the herd or from the flock." All right, so it can't be any wild animal. It has to be a domestic animal. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, all right, and we're going to see once again that star there means that this is an olah offering, the olah offering. He must offer a male without defect. He is to bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting so that it can be accepted by Jehovah. So the entrance to the tent really means the entrance to the courtyard. The courtyard is open. The priests have done the morning sacrifice. The courtyard is open. And now he wants to bring this sacrifice and offer this offering to Jehovah. 4, he is to lay his hand upon the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted on his behalf to make atonement for him. So whatever the reason this person is bringing it, there's a transference of understanding the seriousness of what he has done or what he is requesting, and the transference of putting his hand on the head of the animal. That transference is an understanding of the seriousness of what this system is entailing. It goes on to say, he is to slaughter the young bull before Jehovah. Now, most of the time you had to be very wealthy to have a bull, or the bull could be symbolic of leaders or the high priest or one of the priests. It is usually transferred to a position. It could even be government. So later when there were kings, they would bring a bull, and this offering was to atone for something that even the people had done. And the sons of Aaron, the Kohanim, or the priests, are to present the blood. They are to splash the blood so the animal's throat would be cut. The animal would be bound, his throat cut, and then the blood would be gathered in a pan while the animal was then skinned. So the people were also learning the proper method of killing an animal so that it wasn't so brutal, and they were learning how to cut up the animal and divide it up. So they were learning all these things as they're watching the priests do this, so that everyone would know the proper manner in which, even though they're not, if they're doing it anywhere but the temple or the tabernacle, they're not doing it in the name of Jehovah, but they can kill an animal. And this is the way it was to be done. Now, not the splashing of the blood and all of that, but they were to take the blood and pour it out at a designated place. They are to splash the blood against all sides of the altar, which is by the entrance to the tent of meeting. Remember, once you came inside the courtyard, there would be the altar for the burning of the sacrifices. On the other side of the altar would be the bronze wash basin, where they would wash certain parts of the animal and prepare them for the burning on the altar. It goes on to say the descendants of Aaron, the priest, are to put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. The sons of Aaron, the priest, are to arrange the pieces, the head and the fat, on the wood which is on the fire on the altar. He is to wash the entrails and the lower parts of the legs with water, and the priest, the Kohen, is to cause all of it to go up in smoke on the altar as a burnt offering. So none of this, outside of the hide perhaps, would be saved. The rest is all burned on the altar. And whatever doesn't burn is taken to a place outside the camp and completely burned there. It says right here that the priest, the Kohen, is to cause all of it to go up in smoke on the altar as a burnt offering. That's the olah. It is an offering made by fire, a fragrant aroma for Jehovah. Once again, anybody that's ever barbecued know that when that meat is burning, that is not a fragrant aroma. So it wasn't the smell per se. What it was, and that's why the priest would hold his hands up, the smoke is rising. And so that's why even today, when we are worshiping and praising, we're holding our hands up. That's because we're recognizing the holiness and the authority of Jehovah, our God, the one that we are worshiping. And so this is what happens at the altar as the fire is going up and the priest is holding up his hands. And Jehovah is saying, I'm accepting the sacrifice. So when we're praising and worshiping, Jehovah is saying, I am accepting your worship when it's done in account of what? A pure heart. Let's go on. If his offering is from the flock, whether from the sheep or from the goats, for a burnt offering, he must offer a male without defect. Repeating it one more time. He is to slaughter it on the north side of the altar before Jehovah. And the sons of Aaron, at the north side of the altar, is where the animals would be positioned. This would be on the right of the entrance. As you go into your right would be the place where the animal was. That would be the north side of the altar, and that's where the animal would be sacrificed. So we get even more detail here of how this is to take place. They are to splash his blood against all sides of the altar. He is to cut it into pieces, and the priest is to arrange them with the head and fat on the wood, which is on the fire on the altar. He is to cut it into pieces, and the priest is to arrange them on the fire on the altar. Verse 13, he is to wash the entrails and lower parts of the leg with water, and the priest is offer it all, make it go up in smoke on the altar as a burnt offering. It is an offering made by fire, a fragrant aroma for Jehovah. That is symbolic. That fragrant aroma for Jehovah is symbolic of obedience. It is a fragrant aroma because you are obeying and doing what Jehovah said, just as we learned back in Genesis. This wasn't the first time there were sacrifices. Back in Genesis, it said that Abel and Cain brought an offering, and Jehovah accepted Abel's offering. Why? Because that's what Jehovah had instructed Adam to do. So in obedience, there was acceptance. So that's what makes it a fragrant aroma, not the smell of the burning of the fat and the meat. But the fact of the matter is you are being obedient and you're reverencing Jehovah by what you're doing. And so we go to verse 14. If his offering to Jehovah is a burnt offering of birds, he must offer a dove or a young pigeon. Once again, a person that has not very little. And we'll notice that Joseph and Mary, when they went to the temple to dedicate Yeshua, brought 2 doves because they were considered poor. But this is just as valuable. Why? Because it is the heart that we're talking about here. That's all they had. That's all they could bring. So Jehovah accepts that. Verse 15, the priest is to bring it to the altar, snap off his head, and make it go up in smoke on the altar. His blood is to be drained out on the side of the altar. He is to remove the food pouch and its feathers from its neck and discard it on the pile of ashes just east of the altar. He is to pull it open with the wing on each side. Don't break it apart, break it in half, but just open it up without tearing it in half. The priest is to make it go up in smoke on the altar, on the wood which is on the fire, as a burnt offering. It is an offering made by fire, a fragrant aroma for Jehovah. So the morning and evening sacrifices are burnt offerings. So we see over here a picture of, once again, the altar. The dimensions are askew, but there's the basin, right? And here is inside the holy place, the altar of incense. Because we'll see in the grain offering where not the incense that's burned on the incense altar, but another type is prepared for this going up in smoke. So let us go on to chapter 2, which is going to take in another offering called the mincha, which we see at the bottom of the page, mincha, and that is in fact the grain offering. Anyone who brings a grain offering to Jehovah is to make his offering of fine flour. He is to pour olive oil on it and put frankincense on it. Once again, we see in this particular offering, a person is very poor, but they want to feel close to Jehovah, that they are doing what Jehovah would have them to do. So you can even bring grain. And Jehovah even made it so that you could glean a part of the field. A part of the crops was left aside for the very poor. And so you could go there and gather up some and roast it and prepare it and then take that as an offering to Jehovah. Let's go on, verse 2. He is to bring it to the sons of Aaron, the Kohanim, or the priest. The Kohen is to make a handful of fine flour from it. Take a handful, together with its olive oil and all its frankincense, and make this reminder portion go up in smoke on the altar as an offering made by fire, a fragrant aroma for Jehovah. Fragrant aroma for Jehovah means obedience. And if your heart is done right, it's not just a ritual you're trying to get over, then the beauty of it is whatever that situation was, you know that Jehovah has heard what you have stated. But the rest of the grain offerings, it's only a small portion of that. A handful, a scoop of it will go on the fire. The rest of it goes to the priest. The rest of the grain offering, verse 3, will belong to Aaron and his sons. It is especially holy part of the offering for Jehovah, made by fire. This understanding deals with the parable that Yeshua gave concerning the wheat and the tares, and how he will decide that he will gather up the wheat and the wheat, those that made the correct kind, that their hearts were right with him. They will be blessed to go on. But those were the tares, the ones that did not obey, that did not want to hear what Yeshua had to say, does not want to deal with the Torah. Those were what? Cast burned in the fire, and the fire of eternal damnation. When you bring a grain offering, verse 4, which has been baked in the oven, it is to consist of either unleavened cakes made with fine flour mixed with olive oil, or matzah spread with olive oil. They're your matzah cakes. We see these matzah crackers that we had. You could even bake that and bring that in a basket as your offering for Jehovah. So you can see all this is about the love that Jehovah has for his people. And in honoring his request, you demonstrate your love to him. You ought to break it in pieces and pour olive oil on it. It is a grain offering. If your offering is a grain offering cooked in a pot, it is to consist of fine flour with olive oil. So here we see the grain that is roasted, the wheat that is roasted, and we have the crackers. Let's go on. Excuse me. You ought to bring the grain offering prepared in any of these ways to Jehovah. It is to be presented to the priest, Kohen, and he is to bring it to the altar. The Kohen is to remove the remainder portion of the grain offering and make it go up in smoke on the altar as an offering made by fire, a fragrant aroma for Jehovah. Once again, means obedience. But the rest of the grain offering will belong to Aaron and his son. So even in baking these cakes or these matzah crackers, basically unleavened, even in doing that, it is being obedient to what Jehovah has told you to do. And the priests are even blessed. So they get to eat a portion of this even with their meals. And look what he says. No grain offering that you bring to Jehovah is to be made with leaven. So don't bring the leaven. Why? All of the parables concerning leaven, because leaven was not to be burned on the altar, because you are not to cause any leaven or honey to go up in smoke as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. Why honey? Not sure. Anything I studied, I couldn't find out. But we know understanding leaven meaning sin. So Yeshua was what? Sinless. Even the fact that they asked for an animal in its first year is basically under the understanding that it's like a child. It is pure at that point. So that's why they asked for that particular animal to be brought in as a sacrifice, because it is considered to be pure. So when you get it without blemish, then that is acceptable to Jehovah. Yeshua was acceptable because he had not sinned. He committed no sin. And so that made him acceptable as an offering to atone for all of our sins. As an offering of first fruit, you may bring these to Jehovah, but they are not to be brought up unto the altar to make an aroma. So if you wanted to make some cakes, make some bread, and bring it as part of your tithing of the first fruits, you could do that. But it would not be burned on the altar. Now you're just being obedient once again to Jehovah by giving this portion and understanding that it would go to the priest. You ought to season every grain offering of yours with salt. So some salt. There was a lot of salt around the altar to soak up all this blood. So there was salt around the altar. But then we hear what Yeshua is always saying, you are the salt of the earth, and don't lose your what? Don't lose your purity. So this pure salt was then part of the offering. Do not omit from your grain offering the salt of the covenant with your Elohim, your God, but offer salt with all your offerings. So this lets us know then that the value of the purity of salt is making this mixture that Jehovah is saying is a fragrant aroma to him, or in obedience to him. If you bring a grain offering of first fruits to Jehovah, you ought to bring as the grain offering for your first fruit kernels of grain from fresh ears, dry roasted with fire. Put olive oil on it and lay frankincense on it. It is a grain offering. The priest is the cause. The remainder portion of it is grits. I should have highlighted grits since I love grits. so much, and olive oil, and with all its frankincense to go up in smoke. It is an offering made by fire for Jehovah. So that ends our mincha offering. Let's go on. Chapter 3. Now we have the third type of offering, and that is called the peace offering. Peace means shelamim, the shelamim offering. If his offering is a sacrifice, a peace offering, then if he offers before Jehovah an animal from the herd, then no matter whether it is a male or female, it must be without defect. It must be spotless or unblemished. He is to lay his hand on the head of his offering and slaughter it at the entrance to the tent of meeting. And the sons of Aaron the priest are to splash the blood against all sides of the altar. He is to present the sacrifice of the peace offering as an offering made by fire to Jehovah. It is to consist of the fat covering the inner organs, excuse me, all the fat above the inner organs, the 2 kidneys, the fat on them near the flanks, and the covering of the liver, which he will remove from the kidney. So now all of the organs and the fat surrounding the organs are what are going to go up on smoke on the altar. The rest of the animal will be given to the priest, and part of it is given back to the one who brought the animal for the sacrifice to enjoy with his family. Aaron's sons will make it go up in smoke on the altar on top of the burnt offering, which is on the wood of the fire. It is an offering made by fire, a fragrant aroma for, it should be Adonai, it should be Jehovah. I don't know how I missed that. Verse 6, if his offering for a sacrifice of peace offerings is from the flock, then when he offers it, no matter whether it is a male or female, once again, it's repeating that. And it's also letting us know it must be a domesticated animal, not a wild animal. It is not acceptable. If he brings a lamb for his offering, then he is to present it before Jehovah. He is to lay his hand on the head of his offering and slaughter it at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Laying on of the hands is the transference. I would like you to bless this situation. And I'm offering this in love of my love for you and for the fact that I worship and I adore you. So he's giving this particular offering. Once again, Aaron and his son are to splash his blood against all the sides of the altar. So we see in the temple, there would be the altar, the priest going up and making the sacrifice. This is the offering called the peace offering. The peace offering. Let's go on. Verse 9. When the sacrifice is made as peace offerings, he is to present Jehovah with an offering made by fire. It is, once again, he's telling us what the lamb or what the goat must be and what part of it is sacrificed on the altar, and the rest of it is given to the priest and given back to the person who brought the offering. You see, it's the kidneys, the fat on them near the flanks, and the coverings of the liver, which he will remove with the kidneys. Verse 11, the priest will make it go up in smoke on the altar. It is food, an offering made by fire to Jehovah. Why does it say it is food? Because it is going to be given to the priest, and also part of it is given back to the person who brought the animal to sacrifice it. Right? He is to lay his hands on his head and slaughter it in front of the tent of meeting. Remember, that would be on the north side of the altar. He is to present from it his offering, an offering made by fire to Jehovah. Once again, it repeats the inner organs and those parts of it that will be put on the altar and go up in smoke. Verse 16, the priest will make them go up in smoke on the altar. It is food, an offering made by fire, a fragrant aroma. All the fat belongs to Jehovah. It is to be a permanent regulation through all your generations, wherever you live, that you will eat neither fat nor blood. So Jehovah is letting us know that those parts are acceptable to him. What does it entail? Why? Doesn't matter. The most important thing of trying to figure out why does Jehovah want this is in obedience. Trusting in him, in obedience, we do it. Why do we praise? Why do we worship? Why do we pray? It's because he has told us we should do it. And blessings come with obedience. So we're acknowledging our trust and our love to Jehovah when we do the things that we have been instructed we are to do. Let's go on to chapter 4. We're going to pick up an additional type of offering. Jehovah said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, if anyone sins inadvertently, very important. The sin offering is called chatot. Chatot, because you have to make that guttural sound, chatot, in Hebrew. Inadvertently is the key thing. It can't be, this is when you sin, this is a missing the mark. It is not, you didn't willfully go about sinning. What it was is you inadvertently sinned. You missed the mark. You didn't think it out clearly. It wasn't premeditated. You didn't think clearly and you acted hastily and irrationally against, it says right here, against any of the commands of Jehovah concerning things which should not be done. If he does any one of them, then if it is the anointed priest who sinned and thus brings guilt on the people, he is to offer Jehovah a young bull. Once again, the priest must offer the young bull because of the gravity of the priest missing the mark. Without defect as a sin offering for the sin he committed. So part of his laying on of hands is repentance, acknowledging what was done and repenting for what was done, turning from that. He must bring the bull to the entrance to the tent of meeting before Jehovah, lay his hand on the bull's head and slaughter the bull in the presence of Jehovah. The anointed Kohen priest is to take some of the bull's blood and bring it to the tent of meeting. The Kohen is to dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times in the presence of Jehovah in front of the curtain of the sanctuary. The priest is to put some of the blood on the horns of the altar for fragrant incense before Jehovah there in the tent of meeting. All remaining blood of the bull he is to pour out at the base of the altar for burnt offering, which is at the entrance to the tent of meeting. So that's why I said around the altar would be a lot of salt to absorb some of that blood, the amount of blood that was coming from these animals that was splashed on the altar, and as well as the curtain on the tabernacle. And he is to remove from the bull for the sin offering all the fat covering the inner organs, all the fat above the inner organ, the 2 kidneys, the fat on them near the flanks, and the covering of the liver, which he will remove with the kidneys. So the person that is bringing this animal is also learning once again the correct process of slaughtering an animal and what can be eaten and what should not be eaten. So these fat and these kidneys are not going to be eaten. They're going to be, not by men anyway, are not going to be eaten. They're going to be taken away to a place. Let's go on so we can try to get through this. As it is removed from an ox sacrificed as a peace offering or bull, and the Kohen is to make these parts go up and smoke on the altar for burnt offerings. But the bull's hide and all its flesh, with its head, the lower parts of its legs, its inner organs and dung, in other words, the insides that are not those parts, he is to bring outside the camp to a clean place where the ashes are emptied out. So there's a fire that is made out of there from many of the ashes that at one point were in the altar, where they would take the ashes outside the camp to make this fire for this burnt offering. There, because this is for sin, it is taken outside the camp. If the entire community, so this connects the community with the understanding that we're responsible for one another. So when Cain asks Jehovah, is he responsible for his brother? The answer is yes, you are responsible. So this is bringing the community together in responsibility for one another. If the entire community of Israel inadvertently makes a mistake, with the assembly being unaware of the matter, and they do something against any of the commands of Jehovah concerning things which should not be done, they are guilty. When the sin they have committed becomes known, then the assembly is to offer a young bull as a sin offering and bring it before the tent of meeting. The leaders of the community are to lay their hands on the bull's head and slaughter the bull in the presence of Jehovah. The anointed Kohen is to bring some of the bull's blood to the tent of meeting. Once again, they're splashing and sprinkling that blood on the curtain to the holy place. The priest is to dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times in the presence of Jehovah in front of the curtain. He is to put some of the blood on the horns of the altar before Jehovah, there in the tent of meeting. All the remaining blood is to pour out at the base of the altar for burnt offering, which is at the entrance to the tent of meeting. He is to remove all its fat and make it go up in smoke on the altar. This is what he is to do with the bull. He must do the same with this bull as he does with the one for the sin offering. The sin offering is always done in that manner. Thus the priest will make atonement for them and they will be forgiven. Now that's the important thing. Jehovah is reminding the people that you are forgiven. I believe John writes concerning Yeshua that if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Jehovah wants the people to know that they are forgiven by Jehovah. Jehovah forgives you. He is to bring the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull. It is a sin offering for the assembly. When a leader sins and it inadvertently does something against any of the commands of Jehovah concerning things which should not be done, he is guilty. That's a king or the head of a particular tribe. If the sin which he committed becomes known to him, he is to bring his offering a male goat without defect, lay his hand on the goat's head. How is it made known to him? By other members of the community. Someone saying, this is what has transpired, and bringing that to the leader's attention. He is to slaughter it in the place where they slaughter the burnt offering in the presence of Jehovah. It is a sin offering. Look, it is inadvertently they made a mistake. We're not aware that that was the case, which we can, as the best example is of coming in contact with someone that they didn't know was impure. Didn't know that that person was like that. Well, the main issue is to bring the community together to understand the weight of these kind of transgressions against the commandments. And the fact that in the end, we will say, all its fat is to make go up in smoke on the altar like the fat of the sacrifice of peace offering. Thus the priest will make atonement for him in regard to his sin, and he will be forgiven. So you are forgiven by Jehovah. Therefore, the community should forgive you. There may be some restitution you have to make, but all that's going to have to be done before the offering is made. If an individual among the community commits a sin involuntarily, verse 27, doing something against any of the commands of Jehovah concerning things which should not be done, he is guilty. You're guilty. You did it. You acknowledge it. He's telling you to acknowledge it. I did it. I'm sorry. I repent. If the sin he committed becomes known to him, he is to bring as his offering a female goat without defect for the sin he committed. Lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter the sin offering in the place of the burnt offering. The priest is to take some of his blood with his finger, put it on the horns of the altar for burnt offerings. All its remaining blood he is to pour out at the base of the altar. All its fat he is to remove, as the fat is removed from the sacrifice for peace offerings, and the Kohen will make it go up in smoke on the altar as a fragrant aroma of Jehovah, designating obedience. Thus the priest will make atonement for him, and he will be forgiven. So Jehovah always concludes by saying, and he will be forgiven. So here the leader is in a discussion about something that took place, and he understands the matter. He repents, he atones for it, he tells the people, he realizes what has happened. I am sorry. Then he goes about the process of repentance, turning from that and making his sacrifice on the altar. Let's go on so we can get through. If he brings a lamb as his sin offering, once again, the whole thing goes through what part of the animal is to burn, how the blood is to be poured out on the altar. All its remaining blood he is to pour out at the base of the altar. All its fat he is to remove, as the fat of a lamb is removed from the sacrifice for peace offering, and the priest, Kohen, is to make it go up in smoke on the altar, on top of the offering for Jehovah made by fire. Thus the priest will make atonement for him in regard to the sin he committed. So you can bring a lamb, you can bring a goat, you can bring a bull, you can bring an ox. He will be forgiven. Verse chapter 5, as we conclude our lessons for today. If a person who is a witness, sworn to testify, sins by refusing to tell what he has seen or heard about the matter, he must bear consequences. If a person touches something unclean, whether the carcass of an unclean wild animal, a domestic animal, or a reptile, he is guilty, even though he may not be aware that he is unclean. If he touches some human uncleanliness, no matter what the source of his uncleanliness is, and is unaware of it, then when he learns of it, he is guilty. If someone allows to slip from his mouth an oath to do evil or to do good, and he doesn't remember that he clearly spoke this oath, then no matter what it was about, when he learns of it, he is guilty. A person guilty of any of these things is to confess in what manner he sinned and bring his guilt offering, the fifth type of offering, guilt or trespass offering. It is called ma'al in Hebrew, a trespass offering. So this particular offering could be because you picked up something that wasn't yours and didn't return it. Whatever you did to violate one of the commands, then you have been made aware of what you have done, then you have to bring this type of offering. It is to be a female from the flock, either a lamb or a goat, as a sin offering. And the priest will make atonement for him in regard to his sins. Once again, there's going to be a transference. If he can't afford a lamb, he is to bring as his guilt offering for the sin he committed 2 doves or 2 young pigeons for you. So no matter what your status is, you must atone for what you have done. Why? Because you want to be in right standing with Jehovah. That's what repentance is. It means apologizing, turning from that thing, so that he says, I'm faithful and just to forgive you and cleanse you from the unrighteousness. But you have to fess up to what you did. And you have to say you're sorry. If you got the 2 doves or the 2 pigeons, he is to bring them to the priest, who will offer the one for a sin offering first. He is to wring its neck, but not remove the head, sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, and drain out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. He is to prepare the second as a burnt offering in the same manner. Thus the priest will make atonement for him in regard to the sin he committed, and he will be forgiven. That's Jehovah demonstrating his love for the people. And the whole concept of korban is to get close, to return to Jehovah. I want to get back close with you because you are holy. You don't make mistakes, but I did. Look at this, verse 11. But if his means are insufficient, even for 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, then he is to bring as his offering for the sin he committed 2 quarts of fine flour for a sin offering. He is not to put any olive oil or frankincense on it because it is a sin offering. He is to bring it to the priest, and the priest is to take a handful of it as its reminder portion and make it go up in smoke on the altar on top of the offerings for Jehovah made by fire. It is a sin offering. Thus the priest will make atonement for him in regard to the sin he committed concerning any of these things, and he will be forgiven. The rest will belong to the priest as with a grain offering. Jehovah then said to Moshe, if anyone acts improperly and inadvertently sins, I can't get too close to the top. It covers up my words. In regard to the holy things of Jehovah, he is to bring as his guilt offering for Jehovah a ram without defect from the flock, or its equivalent in silver shekels. According to your appraisal, it is a guilt offering. So they're going to determine the value of the restitution. In addition, he is to make restitution. And look at this. In addition, he is to make restitution for whatever he did wrong in regard to the holy thing. Moreover, he is to add to that 1/5 and give it to the 1/5 and give it to the priest. The Kohen will make atonement for him by a ram as a guilt offering, and he will be forgiven. If someone sins by doing something against any of the commands of Jehovah concerning things which should not be done, he is guilty. You got to admit the guilt. He is guilty, even if he is unaware of it, and he bears the consequences of his wrongdoing. He must bring a ram without defect from the flock or its equivalent according to your appraisal to the Kohen as a guilt offering. The Kohen will make atonement concerning the error which he committed, even though he was unaware of it, and he will be forgiven. So he was unaware of it when it took place, but now he knows that it transpired and he asked for forgiveness. If verse 21, if someone sinned and acts perversely against Jehovah by dealing falsely with his neighbor in regard to a deposit of security entrusted to him, by stealing from him, by extorting from him, or by dealing falsely in regard to a lost object he has found, or by swearing to a lie, if a person commits any of these sins, verse 23, then if he sinned and is guilty, he is to restore whatever he stole or obtained by extortion, or whatever was deposited with him, or the lost object which he found, or anything about which he has sworn falsely, he is to restore it in full, plus an additional 1/5. He must return it to the person who owns it on the day when he presents his guilt offering. This is a fascinating concept because Yeshua in ministering told the people that if you have if you have a situation against your brother and you have come to the altar to offer a sacrifice for forgiveness, the first thing you need to do is go back to your brother and make restitution. Don't come to Jehovah and ask for forgiveness. First, return to your brother and make restitution and ask for forgiveness. This is the same concept we're seeing here with this particular offering, the offering of Ma'al. Verse 25, he is to bring as his guilt offering to Jehovah a ram without defect from the flock or its equivalent according to your appraisal. to the priest. It is a guilt offering. Thus the priest will make atonement for him before Jehovah, and he will be forgiven in regard to whatever it was he did that made him guilty. So what we're learning here in this is that concludes our lesson. What we are learning is the fact that in our understanding of korbanot, which is what the sacrificial system is actually called, it's all about getting close to God or returning back to Jehovah after sin. And Yeshua, our Messiah, tells us, well, he's a more perfect sacrifice, as we also will note in the book of Hebrews chapter 10, a more perfect sacrifice. Therefore, even a sin that was not an accident, you willfully sin, that kind of situation can also be forgiven by Yeshua, the blood of Yeshua, as the perfect sacrifice. And in the book of Hebrews, it will explain it in a manner in which you can understand it. If you read chapters 9 and 10, you will see concerning the sacrificial system, how it was foreshadowing, or it was introducing the people to the value of Messiah when he comes. And so this concludes our lesson for tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. Bless you, Mama Anna. I heard about your situation, and I have been praying for you that everything goes well with you, that there is a complete healing and a complete restoration for your wonderful looks. So we know that that is going to be the case. With that, thank you all for joining us. Let us pray. Jehovah, our God, we thank and praise you for this opportunity you have brought before us. We thank you for the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit that comes to guide us into all truth, opening our hearts and minds to receive all that you are speaking to us as we learn concerning the value of the system of korbanot. So we thank you and praise you for all that you do. You're a great God, a loving Father. And in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah, that perfect sacrifice, we say amen and amen again. All right, everyone. Shalom. I'll see you for our Shabbat night service. Remember, on Friday, it's going to be 8 o'clock, because in California, it's 5. And so I'll be just getting off work. So I'll be ready at 5 to go forth with our lesson, our Haftarah portion, which is our companion study that will give us even more information regarding what we have learned on tonight. Shalom, everyone.